Welcome to AgriTech Leaders Podcast. Please subscribe to our channel. Our guest today is Antonio Benitez Q. Welcome, Antonio.
Hello, Adrian. How are you? Good afternoon.
Very good. Thank you. I'm so happy that you are here. Can you
Nice
please
seeing you again.
introduce yourself to our viewers? Who are you? What you are doing, and so on?
Thank you. Well, Adrian, my name is Antonio Benitez Kül. I'm the international sales manager for a silo manufacturer out of Spain by the name of SiloMasters. We're located in the city of Zaragoza, and I take over everything which is related to the commercial development of the company, especially abroad. Uh, my job is to find reselling companies, engineering companies who partnerize with us, who integrate ourselves in their projects towards end customers and investors. From time to time, also we work with end users, especially in Far East countries. And yes, that's basically my activity, my job.
Well, that sounds very interesting. How
Thank
did
you.
you started working in this field? Could be interesting story.
Well, it's a little bit of a it's family linked a little bit. My father has been or had been doing. He's now obviously retired, 84 years old, but he had been doing silos since he was mid 20s. In the late 70s, he already no, in the late 60s, he already was involved in grain silos. In about 20 years plus, 25 years or so, when he was about to get retired. 5 years before he was going to get retired, he approached me a few times asking me to join him to learn. He was as well doing mainly export business for the company he worked for at that time. And he said, Antonio, you speak languages, you've been traveling, not like me, who have not been traveling, or the languages I learned on the route, you learned at school. You're bilingual. With German, you speak a little bit of French. And so it's a pity that we lose all these customers. Why don't you join? And we had this conversation once, twice, and after the third time, I said, okay, let's try it. And this is how it started uh, about 25 years ago. It was a little bit challenging because at the beginning there was a lot of questions about working in the family business with my father. I had never worked with him before, but at the end it turned out it was very very easy to work with him. And here we are. Now he's retired, and I'm still doing it. So I assume that I have done the work more or less to the satisfaction of everybody.
Wow, such an interesting story. It's amazing to start, from to pass from one generation to the next, the family legacy. So,
Yes.
and uh, what is the differentiator of your company in because there's quite a few grain
Yes.
silos out there, quite a few, especially Spain is one of the biggest uh,
Correct.
fields. So what do you think makes you different or better than?
Yes. Well, there's various aspects I would like to name, but effectively, you are absolutely right. Here in Spain, there is a number of producers of silos. Some of them with an extreme long tradition. There's good producers as well in France, in Italy, and Poland. I would like to say that about SiloMasters is that as of today, all especially in the sales team, which is a team of 4 people, there's no one there's no one with less than, let's say, around about 15 to 16 years of experience in the market. So and I think, as we discussed briefly off the record, is that we get a lot of requests from customers asking not only for the silos but the correct solution for a certain situation. Um, just to an example, yes, we're storing corn, but it's humid. How do we proceed? Do we need a grain chiller? How does the aeration work? How's the performance of the temperature monitoring system? So where also the customers request a lot of practical advice out of the experience, that is where we find our marketplace. Um, compared to other manufacturers, or well, probably they're more concentrated on the weight of the silos, the euro per kilo price. But we try to give a lot of service and share our experience with the customer so that they take the right decision at the right time, because storing grain is on the paper something which looks simple, but there is a lot of challenges not to spoil the grain that is being stored in a grain silo, obviously.
Yeah, that's the highest value in a farm. So
Absolutely, if you do some numbers and you have a grain storage facility, doesn't matter where and doesn't matter what you store. If you look at the value of the grain, which is obviously varies, let's say 200 or 250 or $100 per ton or euro per ton of maize, and you see what the cost of the silo it is, or the grain storage and the handling system, the cost of it is very low compared to the value that you are storing in it, and you're handling with it, and you're cleaning and you're drying. And the more gentle you act with this product, the more is the benefit for the farmer or for the trader. That's very easy. The less the grain gets damaged, and the less value gets lost. That's a simple equation in this business.
yeah, so you've
So
been
it is said on grain storage, the quality that you put in is what you will get out at the best. So let's try to keep this quality of the grain so that the farmer and the investor has a lot of return on investment. And in general, as I said, the value of the grain is much higher than what's the value of the assets which are working with it.
right. It's also a very competitive market. Have a lot of
Absolutely.
and could you tell us what was the biggest challenge starting on this market?
Well, uh, the challenge for me at the very early, because from my education, I have nothing to do with agriculture. I'm an engineer for aeronautics, for planes. This is what I did study. I did also some business administration, but starting to learn what is wheat and what is barley and maize, and how the kernel is built up, and so on. This was one of the challenges. Um, the other challenge, which at the end turns out was a positive, I've been thinking about this question. I worked for various companies, obviously, and I worked for Spanish manufacturers. Right now, it's a Spanish manufacturer, but for about 5 or 6 years' time, I did work for a Canadian company doing silos as well. And this was especially challenging at the beginning, because when we do grain storage out of the European way, into the market is completely different that if you do it out of the North American way or Canadian way. What I want to say with this is, obviously, the company I work with was a very cool, good company, a big company, was traded in the Toronto Stock Exchange. So the business itself was driven in a completely different manner than any European silo manufacturers, which traditionally are all kind of family-owned businesses. Nothing against it, obviously. Now it's a family-owned business, but the mentality of how to do business was completely different. I had a long conversation with my former boss, whom I remind very well, and I send him my greetings if he's listening to this, Andre. And he told me once, "I'm paying you some money for knowing about this, because I don't know about silos. I know about managing a company." So this was one of the big challenges. And the other challenge was to understand how the North American especially, talk about grain. So whilst in Europe generally, or also with our competitors from Turkey and so on, there is a lot of discussion about pricing. The Americans obviously also discuss about pricing, but their approach to the market is slightly different. They talk grain management. So when you have a discussion with a customer in the North Americas, they want to know what is the aeration performance of the fan that you're utilizing, what is the type of the temperature monitoring systems that you're utilizing. Is it of this brand, or the other brand? What are the features that are in there? The higher the features, the more interesting it is for them. So they have a different concept of of talking the business. So they talk about grain management, how not to spoil the grain, as we discussed before. And in the European sector, it's still very much driven about what is the cost? What is the cost of a fan? This fan is less power. Will it work as well? The Americans have a very clear understanding, and I think that there they are much more developed than in our market. They have a much more understanding about grain management, grain storage, how to keep value. That's what they talk over there overseas compared to here. And this was a little bit of a challenge to understand that. At the end, after some time, obviously, we learned about that, and we are now capitalizing as well a little bit about this type of knowledge and how to approach certain circumstances. So this was a challenging situation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there are different approaches in the market. Europe, US, also South America has some its own specifics. Um, what would you say to a job seeker today? Let's say a job seeker in Europe uh, that is looking to find a job in grain industry. What kind of advice would you give them? Because obviously you have a
Well, I would say that for a job seeker, is that still this business is a little bit of traditional, um, but with the new generation coming in with a lot of young people. And if you look some of the big companies in Europe, they're investing a lot of in IoT. They're investing in Internet of Things and new developments, not only on newer materials for the equipment and for the machines or so on, but also you see developments on managing grain storage and grain processing and food and feed processing. Biotechnology is coming in into the sector. Recently, it comes up the generation of food and feed based on insects. This is challenging. It's not classical anymore. It's new, and new technologies come in, new ways of thinking, of doing business. It is changing. It has been our business, and as you know, Adrian, has been very stagnant, very classical for many years. But as said, with a new generation coming in with new technologies and with new behaviors of the users, you and me, when we eat and so on, um, this is changing. This is challenging as well. Uh, Probably for me, I'm too old to get into this new wave, but the youngsters, they're well prepared, and business is changing, and you still have a classical approach, but also with new technologies coming in. I think it's very interesting and
yeah.
challenging.
You can be in this industry now. You can be the biggest wave of change.
Yes, the wave of change, I think, is coming now. Other industries are up front. Everybody's talking about automotive industry, for example. Um, and I think now this change is coming into the grain processing industry as well, the pure grain processing, grain handling, storing, cleaning, drying, this part. On the food and feed processing, I think there's already a lot of changes. When you speak with the companies doing feed mills and flour mills, they have a lot of changes, and they have a lot of new technologies built in, and how to food or how to feed the animals and so on. And the grain storage and processing, this is starting to come now. You feel it, you hear about from the questions and from the interest of the customers. The new farmers, the young generation farmers, they want also a different approach and way of acquiring the materials. Remember your silo app, people were interested in making their life easier in acquiring new materials, no? And this is also part of the change.
It's before talking about so many changes that we are facing today, would be interesting to hear some of your fascinating stories about a success story with one of your customers from the past. Can you
Oh,
share?
uh, Well, there have been a few, obviously. I or me and my team, we've always been focusing very much on 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 the production of silos and the direct accessories like the steel structures, catwalks, and so on. We have never been doing or manufacturing such handling equipment, elevators, dryers, and cleaners. So we have been approaching these customers or these companies who offer the turnkey solutions to their customers. Um, when we get when we got the chance to work with a German company, we were asked for a very basic quotation. This almost a lifetime ago, but very basic quotation for one single very big silo. I think it was a 10,000 or 12,000 ton silo. And then I took the chance of this single quotation to visit this company. And during the meeting, I found out it was not only one silo, but it was 120 silos of the same size. Um, and I got home with the order for these 120 silos, um, and um, and this helped the company, which was working at that point of time, to move from a big manufacturer to a very big consolidated manufacturer, because it was a lot of material, a lot of turnover. And some other success stories are minor in terms of volume, but satisfactory on a personal point of view. I remember this was about 3 years ago when I had another phone call from another engineering company where I had been bidding for a silo plant and I lost it about a year before. And uh, and then I received a phone call and they told me, Antonio, how are you? We have a problem in the Middle East region. And I said, with those silos, I did not supply. And they said me, yes. I told them, I think I know the problems that you have. You will most likely have kind of insects or insect infestation in the silo. Yes, why you know? Just because you didn't supply for this region of the world. I advised, or I recommended, or we recommended to use grain chilling systems. It was too expensive, and now you have a problem on the grain silo. So they asked me to join a meeting with the customer, although it was not the silos I supplied, and we gave some advice to the customer on how to improve the situation, how to revert it, which investments he had to make so this would not happen anymore, or at least to reduce very much the risk of getting this infestation again. And he did. At the end, he did these investments, which was not very much. It was obviously a certain amount of money, but not as much as it was not worth investing in it to avoid this kind of problem. So this was a kind of personal satisfaction. I still have contact with all these companies, and and this was one of my small kind of success stories.
Yeah, thank you. It's very important, uh, like you said earlier, that customers should consider more than just the cost or I don't know, only one factor. So, would you,
Hmm.
from your perspective, um, what factors the customer should consider when choosing the silo beans?
Yeah. When we talk about silos, um, remember when I mentioned that when working with this North American company, they don't talk. They talk grain storage. So you have the physical device of the silo, round with the roof, a catwalk on top, or whatever, and then you have different systems. Obviously, you have the quality of the silo. You have in many parts of the world today very strict regulations about the calculations and about the norms you have to apply. This we are developing, we are doing. In Germany or in Europe, you have to supply to the Euro code and you have to present a document so that everybody is safe and everything is legal and there is no problems with insurances and building permissions and so on. This is one part. And this, our company, I would like to say, has been very well prepared. This was the base of the development of our company 5 or 6 years ago. Statics, norms, and so on. On the other hand side, you're putting a lot of money a lot of value into the silo, where we say we put a lot of corn and so on. And a silo is a deposit, but there, what I always very much insist in our conversations, or what we like to transmit, is the best we take care about this grain, the best we'll keep the value, by means of installing very much advanced temperature monitoring systems, fans, which probably some are a little bit more expensive than others, but that the performance of the fans is correctly chosen, so that you get your cubic meters per hour per metric ton stored into the right level. That you perform the aeration when the atmosphere, the surrounding is good. So don't aerate in the summertime when it's humid. Do it in the winter when it's cold and fresh, and the air is dry or drier. Um, so install good weather stations, so you can have also the very modern temperature monitoring systems. They can give you they are linked to the internet. They can have a prediction of when we'll have good weather, a very good appropriate weather situation to perform aeration, right? To cool the grain down, take out the last humidity,
Yeah.
uh, so that that we get below the certain degrees of temperature or certain degrees of humidity, so we reach the safe storage time the longest possible without spoiling the grain and so on. This is something that I like very much to insist. And sometimes these portions about grain management, to keep the grain in a safe condition for a long time within the budget of a whole silo plant, is very low. So
Yeah.
maybe it's only 5%. So maybe we insist on putting in better sensors or humidity sensor or dew point monitoring, weather station. It only costs a few $100 or euros compared to the whole budget of a big silo plant. It's really small investment compared to the benefit you will run out of it. We've been working with a company doing fans in Germany, and along a Danish manufacturer of temperature monitoring system to work on an intelligent silo, an intelligent system. The fan is speaking to the temperature monitoring system. The temperature monitoring system is getting the data of the temperature development in the grain, but as well the outside temperature from the internet with data, and automatically will decide when to run to which point of time will be the best moment for running the aeration, but not only from a point of view of what the best temperature, also which is the best electricity price, for example, so to keep the running costs as well low. So these kind of things is what we like to advise to the customers or to the investors or to the farmers, right?
So they need to think about the added value the whole plant is bringing, and also about the safety, security of their most valuable assets.
Correct, absolutely, because the value is what they store in the grain, and there's nothing worse than the grain gets spoiled for whatever reason that could have been avoided with a decent investment. And as I mentioned before, sometimes as a manufacturer we don't get these after sales requests, but on the shows or when you do a specific trip to some customers, you find out that there is a lot of questions about this in the market, about grain management itself, how to keep grain in a safe manner for a long time. There is a lot of, I think there's a lot of need still to implement to explain, and there's a lot of need of customers to get good advice on that.
Yeah. So once they purchased the grain silo system, once they commissioned and so on, can you give advice about maintenance practices to ensure longevity of the silo beans?
Yes, absolutely. Also there, for our youngsters who want to join the business, um, there is systems today with which are predictive maintenance systems. We collaborate there with a German company. So each equipment on a grain storage plant, from the receiving, from the intake, over all the elevators, cleaners, and dryers, and so on, are equipped with a QR code. This QR code is scanned into an app. In the app, we have all the manuals of all single machines with the maintenance routines and so on. But far but not least is that the system also is learning in the sense of if there is a bearing that needs to be greased or changed, let's say every 100 hours, only for example, but
Yes.
the system sees that this bearing is being changed every 50 hours. At the end, the system will tell you after 50 hours to do some intervention on this specific bearing. And if you have a corporation, you have 3, 4, 5 plants, the system will plan you the route which is the most convenient for the maintenance, for the review of the silos, for the review of the bucket elevators, or or of the dryer. And obviously, if some kind of technical assistance is required from our end to review the silo or any other component, because experience we have, although we don't produce, we have done this a number of times as well, to go to the site and to inspect and give advice to the customer how to keep the how to keep the life of the system and of the machines of the silos. Just recently, again, I got a phone call from a company who has a silo which is 50 years old, still running. So, if well maintained, you keep an eye on it. These machines are get older than 1 or 2 generations of us.
Yeah, yeah. This is of utmost importance to practice do good
Correct.
maintenance. This way
Good
you
maintenance,
can
yes.
prolong the life of the plant for a long time.
I mean, there's a silo and the bucket elevator and chain conveyors. If you look at them in theory, this is a mechanically more or less simple things. They have obviously their complexity, and behind those silos there's a complex silo calculation for sure. But at the end, it's simple mechanical systems, and like if you have a car and you change regularly your filters and your brakes and the wheels and the oil and the liquid for the brakes and so on, you can have a car for a long time, a lot of kilometers. So the same for silos and grain storage plant. If you do a proper maintenance, a proper predictive maintenance, not when it breaks, and you review your site, you can have uh, many years of successful running of a plant. Absolutely, there's no discussion about that. My father once told me, if you allow me to say,
Please.
um, most of the silo plants he has ever sold are still running, and he is 84. And the last time he sold a silo plant was when he was 66 or 67. The last time he put on a signature on a paper. So, Antonio, if they told me if the plant is properly maintained, probably maybe the user gets bankrupt before the silos or the grain handling equipment fails as such, if the maintenance is done properly.
We are looking forward for him to turn 100 years old and
Oh, yeah, thank you.
to see if this statement is still real.
Let's wait another 16 years, and I will tell you,
Yes, please.
and I will invite him.
That would be great. You
Thank you, thank you.
because we discussed earlier about different continents with different perspectives on
Yes.
how to approach this the market. What can you say about um, what if different climates require different maintenance practices all over the world? For example, in Southeast Asia, is it different
Yes.
than in north of Europe, considering maintenance?
Considering the maintenance itself, if you look at the steel structures and so on, maybe rather than different maintenance is maybe different approach. At least from the silo, as you know, there are different materials with which you can finish the silo. You can do in galvanized steel with a coating 350 grams per square meter like the Americans do, or with 600 grams per square meter as the Europeans do, or new materials with especially for the roof, which is the part which is more exposed to the corrosion or to the wear of the weather and so on, the climate, which is we're using Magnelis, which is an alloy which combines zinc, aluminum, and magnesium, or painted roofs.
Yes.
So Yes, different regions have a little bit different approaches. When we go to Central Europe, the areas that you know, I know, and if we are not installing a silo plant directly in a harbor,
Yeah,
the silos will have the silo plant as such will have a rather easy maintenance and long life, so the materials won't rust or won't rust rapidly or so on. If you go to the coast, you have to take in care that you have the salt water spraying from the sea, so it might affect uh, the components of the silo or the bucket elevators, like the bearings. They can get rusty, so you have to especially look at these points. In other windy or snowy areas, you have to look regularly on the roof, or if where the silo plant is installed, you have another chemical other chemical industries nearby that could affect the steel or the surface of the steel. You have to look if this has been affected, do some maintenance of the roof, oxidation, and so on. But on the other part, it is we get many times the requests from we have been doing silos in Sweden, we have been doing things in Norway or in Germany, and sometimes we get approach from the Middle East region, we get from Saudi Arabia or from other places. They say, no, but here it is very hot, so the materials itself won't be affected. Um, the materials itself with which you build the silos and so on. There's a few, if you ask an engineer, there's thermal effects of expansion and so on, but this is physics and intelligent engineers, there's many, they will solve these issues with the thermal expansion. This is not a big problem. But when you're storing grain in places where when it's cold you have 25 degrees or 27 degrees, then you have to take care about a good grain chilling system to reduce the temperature of the grain so it can be kept for a long time, because if not, you're storing it at a high temperature and you can spoil it rapidly. In the Southeast Asian region, for example, you ask me, there is, or in India, there's a lot of rice storage. So the rice storage is slightly different. The rice is a very sensible product, changes
yeah,
its colors, changes its properties, if not properly stored or properly dried. So for each region, for each product, yes, there are some specific things and specific topics that you have to discuss and you have to bear in mind, like the weather, like the type of crop you're storing. And it's not the same if you store the rice in Vietnam, like the rice which is being stored here in Spain, because we don't produce very much. So we get it import, it's already dried. But in Vietnam, you are in a producing country. I'm putting Vietnam as an example only, where you have to dry it. You need to dry it properly. You need to clean it properly and then store it so it can be sold then at a good price. So you have to keep the properties of the grain of the rice, and we always advise to use grain chilling systems to keep the temperature down, so the characteristics of specifically the rice that do not change, because they can change rapidly, change the color, and then it loses a lot of value, and it's not appropriate anymore to for human um, for for sales into the normal food sector, but only for feed. So yes, different markets, different approaches.
yeah. In the context of the of climate change, and when we are facing more extreme weather, basically all over the world,
Yes,
regardless if it's more rainy, more dry, or higher temperature than usual, or lower temperature than usual. This is what happens. Uh,
yes.
do you think all these changes have will have a significant impact on the materials that the industry is using for building silo plants or
Hmm.
mechanical equipment and so on? Do you think that there might be some changes there in the future?
Yes, I think there will be. Not sure on the very short time, but you're already hearing like you have countries like Russia, where they have permafrost soils, or the northern part of Canada where the soil is always frosted, and with the climate change, they expect this soil or these regions to become arable land because it goes defrosted, for example. So there might be some changes. So countries which are already having a huge production in grains. I mentioned Russia. I mentioned Canada. Might be even become even more important. Who knows? Um, if we look to the other way, and I put Spain as an example. Spain is one of those countries, Mediterranean countries, which, from the documentation and the news that we have, might be severely affected by the climate change. So uh, it doesn't have to do with grain, but Spain is a huge olive oil producer. Traditionally, olive oil has been produced in the bottom part of Spain, let's say one third Andalusia and these regions. Well, now you find olive oils in Asturias, which traditionally has been a cold uh, region. So
Yeah.
there you start have some changes in agriculture uh, and or type of products that you are producing, which traditionally do not belong to that region, right? I've heard about other countries which traditionally um, don't look at products like growing oranges. Yeah, also Southern Europe, the oranges are moving towards to the north. Also, the grapes growing in Spain or the grapes growing in Germany, they're changing as well. So the production of grapes is increasing or changing, right? So
Yes.
also with grain, sooner or later, it will change. Countries which maybe didn't have the most convenient weather conditions to grow grain properly might be in a position to increase the yield, probably, or increase the areas that they're growing. So yes, this will for sure it will affect. Up to which extent it will affect you and me in our day-to-day business, I don't know, but a fact is that something will happen. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
strongly convinced.
Uh, you were talking earlier about Internet of Things. Um, can you tell us more about how emerging technologies are affecting the business at this moment, and how do you use it in your business?
So it's coming very slowly into our, at least it's my perception. Other people might think different, but at least my perception is that this is moving slowly into our business. It's affecting more, I would say, even our production itself, uh, or the management, or how to organize the company right now, rather than the business itself outside, on the market, on the grain storage itself. But as I mentioned before, there is a few changes or tools or moving into the what I said, grain management, the so-called intelligent silo. As of today, the technologies is there, and there's a few users making this, where you're sitting at home, like you are sitting at home now, and you would be looking into your mobile phone or app, and you could almost manage your complete silo plants, not only one, various, and you would know where you have an alert. You would know uh, if the plant is running. You would know if it needs maintenance and where the maintenance is needed and which is the critical situation of this. You would know if the trucks are being loaded and what's the schedule of these trucks and what type of trucks are
Yeah.
being used. You would know about the status of your grain by the temperature monitoring system, the humidity systems. It would automatically, or they can automatically start the fans and start the roof ventilators to avoid condensations and all these things. This technology is already existing, and some major users are implementing all these uh, tools available. Probably still it misses a little bit to come together all the independent tools into one single big one, but for sure it will come as soon as people and the investors start to recognize about the ease of managing a grain storage facility, not only one but various if they have various on site, and also because they can uh, automatically cross these numbers where with the bookkeeping and see what's the value of what I have on stock, what is what is the value in the market. There is there are systems for automatic automatic inventory management system. So you have a big silo plant and you can have a 99 or 98% accuracy of what is the volume of the product that is stored, what type of products in which silo to which quantity, what is the price I paid for it,
Yeah.
what's the price I would get for it today. All these systems are existing and it's coming slowly into utilization.
Why do you think the adoption rate is so slow or slower than expected?
I'm not sure. You know that mankind is very reluctant to changes.
Okay.
Maybe this has to do, but maybe yeah. This is a big. It's just a question mark. Maybe this has to do with the generation. I'm for sure that that young farmers have a completely different approach to these things than maybe their father's generation. Like my father did the quotes and sent it by fax, and he had 3 days. He had 3 weeks to do a quotation. I need to send by email and do the quotation in one single day, including a drawing. Um, so I think this has to do a little bit with the generational change of the farmers. Still a lot of farms, still a lot of investors are private investors, and maybe not traded companies. There are obviously many traded companies, but still very family driven, and then it needs a little bit of generational change to get this in. This is my, but again, my personal opinion. Probably
Yeah.
it goes this direction. This direction.
Yeah, it's from my experience, you might have something there because 15 years ago, I had some experience with a technology that um, was already available in the market at that time. And people, mostly farmers, were very interested in it, but only to learn what it can do, but they never had the courage to adopt it. And
Correct.
only past few years really started to get some air beneath its wings,
Yes.
and really taking off. But yeah, at that time I wondered a lot why it's um, it's not something that will jump on it and grab it because the benefits are unbelievable.
Yes, I agree with you. And again, I think this has to do a little bit of the generational change. Maybe with the education of the people, where you say, where is the return on investment? Um, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to make people understand where the benefit is. But again, I think it will come slowly. It depends. Um, I've been recently been talking with one of our Australian dealer, um, and even Australia, which for me is on the other part of the world, almost completely opposite. Was very interesting that they already adopt solutions which here are not yet adopted. Let's say let's say Europe, Middle East, and Africa, but
Yeah,
over there it's a standard, like in Canada or the US. So these things will slowly come to us as well. And again, I think it has to do a little bit with the generational uh, change. I'm pretty sure about that.
yeah, it's very interesting. Can you reveal what technology is a standard in Australia but not yet adopted in Europe?
So there's a company doing very special sensors which detect phosphine gases for fumigation, measure the concentration inside of the silos. Fumigation in Australia is very well even ruled. There's norms about it. How to do fumigation is the only country in the world which has a specific norm for that. And in this company, we've spoken a lot of times in trying to get these sensors to the market, which measure all kinds of not phosphine, but also temperature and give a lot of feedback to the user about grain management. and we have never been really able. Yes, a lot of people with having interest, um, but we never managed one step further. And talking with our partner in Australia, said, well, yes, this company has sold a few thousands of those sensors over here, standard. So it has to do with the market philosophy, thinking of the people. I think in Europe, I come back to Europe, but not only, but in Europe, we have had a lot of business and a lot of grain storage handling plants and processing plants, very much linked to subventions from the European Union with extremely limited budgets, and there's a budget of a certain amount, and we want to supply only one of these and one of these, but nothing else because this is what is covered by the subventions. Maybe it has to do with that as well. So no innovations because it's not covered, but by the money I will get from the government or from this EU central institutions. Maybe it's that. But again, sooner or later, this will be coming over to us as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes the innovation goes from the innovator to the end user and not the other way around. And the innovator is saying, look, this with my solution, my software or my sensors, whatever, I can help you cut costs with 50%. It's just an example.
Yes.
But the user, the end user, let's say the farmer, will think, but I don't consider this as a problem. I don't trust that you really cut. So I'm doing this for, I don't know, 20 years and it was running okay. I had no
Mhm.
issues with
It,
that.
it cannot run better.
Okay, it cost 100. You promise it you will cut the cost to 50, but I don't trust you. I'm waiting for someone else to
Someone else
yes. Then I can see with my own eyes that you are not joking.
cheating me, or it's correct what you're telling me. Yes, we have this situation many times as well.
I also adopted. From my
Yes.
experience, this is the general mindset that I encounter with.
Yes, it's very typical. Let's see what the neighbor is doing. If he's doing and is running well, then we will think about the next step.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true. We have this as well. We
So,
have this as well.
yeah, what kind of advice would you give to um, startups or to innovators in order to find a better market, product market fit when they want to solve the problems of farmers or
Okay. Speak with the farmers first about your idea. With many farmers, um, we have had, or I have had as well, once or twice some similar to you. We have had some good ideas. We spent some money on developing these ideas, thinking that everybody would love this idea. And yes, the idea is good, but we have never talked to the real user of it, and then saying yes, it's fine. It could solve a problem, but my problem for that solution is not that big that I would invest this amount of money to solve it. I speak from my own experience. It was not a high technology, but well, there was some development costs and so on, and we did it for ourselves without having the proper contacts with the real users, people working with their hands. I think it's very important that you get them on board. Absolutely, absolutely.
it's very important to discover with the customer what is the most important problem for them, which they
Yes,
consider to be a problem, not you, and how much or if they are able willing to pay to solve that
pay
problem.
or to invest exactly. It's nothing worse than staying at home thinking that this is a good solution for this problem, but maybe it's not a problem that some of the users appreciate as a big problem or a big issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So uh, I'm asking you about another problem that we are facing today, and this is the geopolitical turmoil all over the world. How do you think this affects the industry? Because unfortunately, we face a lot of conflict, wars,
Mhm.
all different tensions in different parts of the world.
Yes.
Do you feel that something is changing also in the industry as a consequence of all this trouble?
Um, yeah, it's a good topic. We could speak about that many hours. Um, yes, I think there's things changing. Um, so once we on one side we have these geopolitical problems that you mentioned. We know about the war, Russia, Ukraine. We have Southeast Asia region where China is also a little bit aggressive to some of its neighbors, and so on. Also, the Chinese companies have a lot of money, are pushing very hard in the market. That's true. I mean, that's a fact that the Chinese companies are doing well. Um, they're pushing a lot into certain markets. They're going into Africa. They're going into the Middle East regions. They're coming into Europe. They will be coming into Europe like the same like the cars. This will be challenging. But yes, when these things happen, like the war situation in Russia and so on, um, things changed for companies like us and most of our competitors. Uh, losing Russia as a good customer was a big change because we had to reallocate not only us, some of our customers, not only our competitors, but some of our customers who had a lot of focus on Russia and Russian-speaking countries. They had to move into other regions for keeping the sales, but also not only that, also the mindset of many, let's say, countries or major companies or trading companies have changed. Like we have seen how much is the dependence of the grain which is coming from certain regions, and what could be the danger if from one day to the other the grain is not coming anymore from that region. Um, I take back a very simple example. Uh, Spain is one, or during many years, has been one of the main importers, not of curiously, we have up to the 60s, 70s, we were a major producer of sunflower. Now we are one of the largest importers of sunflower and sunflower oil from Ukraine. And suddenly, in our supermarkets, we saw how the sunflower oil price for me, for my salad or for my schnitzel or whatever, just increased rapidly. The price within days, you could it was comparable to the olive oil price. So this has made a lot of and there is a lot of projects all around the world, all around the world. There is a lot of movement into get they get independent, food independent, creating food and feed securities, minimum stocks in Africa, in India, countries which are investing a lot in agriculture to get self-sufficient, not only grain, also in I don't know, let's say potato or meat or whatever, but in food and feed. So this in the last 2 3 years, I would say, you feel it, you see it. It takes a long time to make this change. It takes a long time that somebody, a government, an institution, a cooperative, someone invests in something. But there's a clear tendency of getting more regions self-sufficient. The flow of grains is changing. Some countries are trying to get the new hubs for grain, and so on. So yes, obviously this affects the market, and it affects as well the way of doing business. We have seen as well with all these changes some movement in the market, which is, I do again a comparison to automotive industry because I consider it's one of the most developed industries, which is produced where you need it. So we as a silo manufacturer we got requests, probably not only us, but also some of our other companies doing silos have received requests to establish factories. I don't know, in Vietnam, or they receive requests to partner with somebody to establish a factory in India.
Yeah,
Uh, some competitors have established silos manufacturing plants in Egypt. I know there's some African countries interested in this technology. So also this is changing, and it's challenging for us as a producer to see what's going to happen. Do I invest in my factory, or do I look for a partner to produce some silos locally where there's a big market like Southeast Asia? Why not? So yes, there's a lot of movement, the political, this situation, but also and with this the mindset, produce it where you need it. Yes,
Yeah,
why should I produce a silo in Spain and take it over to Philippines if I couldn't be produced in Philippines or in the region? It's cost, it's shipment cost, it's an ecological aspect. You are not
yeah.
shipping 40 or 50 containers to there. You are producing it locally. So there's many aspects that come into this thinking, which is in the market out there. It is for sure.
In the past years, we faced a lot of additional crises as well. The steel crisis,
Mm.
um, um, micro chip crisis, and
Hmm.
of metal crisis,
Yes,
logistic chain crisis during COVID, and so on. A lot of these things that starts with crisis.
yes.
What would you say is the biggest challenge for the um, grain silo manufacturers today? What is the biggest um, thing that makes you, I don't know, keeps you up?
Which keeps me up in the evenings. um, you have mentioned some crisis. You mentioned COVID. COVID changed a lot. Like this meeting today,
Yeah,
before of the COVID, I might have taken a plane to visit you, or you had been visiting me, or we had to meet in Madrid, or in Zaragoza, or in
yeah,
Bucharest, or in Frankfurt. I don't know. This has been a big change, which we have all profited from. Me personally, I'm traveling less than I used to travel before, which is fine. My wife is happy, my daughters are happy, so everybody's happy in that. The challenging situation that I think, for me, my personal opinion, is that in general, the last 2, 3, 4 years, the overall political situation all over the world um, brings a lot of instability into the business. The demand for grain is there. The demand for grain storing, grain processing, food and feed processing is there. The people keep on, the population keeps on growing. Some countries are getting wealthier and wealthier. I read just recently, I put again the example of Vietnam. The GDP of Vietnam has been constantly growing over the last 4 or 5 years, like in the range of 4, 5, 6%. There was no middle class. Now there is a middle class. They all want to have good food and good feed and so on. But the political instability, all these things that we have with radicalism on the to the left or to the right, doesn't matter. I don't want to be politics because I don't understand very much. But all these extremes bring a lot of. I'm not spending the money now. I'm not investing now. We'll see what comes. This is something that is affecting um, many producers of silos and handling and turnkey supplies. The decision time has become very, very long because people rethink many times if they go ahead with investments or not, because the overall picture the overall picture is not very nice. Unfortunately, we have so many focus today. They're all in the news every day, because these are important countries where this is happening, but there's a lot of hidden, which we don't know about, in Africa, everywhere, and this affects us as well. So I think this is something that we should all think about a little bit, not being so stupid and kill each other. Sorry to say it like this, but this brings a lot of instability into the overall business.
all this instability and longer
Long decision, and not to forget the if we have Chinese guests listening, I hope they understand. But uh, China is also changing rapidly for the export in our business. In the last 1 or 2 years, we have seen good companies coming out of China. They were in our market 10, 15 years ago. They've gone home. They've made their business, their homework. They're coming, and again, like the cars or like the planes, they will come, and they want to have their piece of the cake. And here in Europe, and the American manufacturers also the ones in Turkey or in South America and Brazil and Argentina, where there's a few manufacturers as well. We'll all have to face this new situation because they're coming with a lot of power and good products as well. That's it. So we have to face it. They will be coming, and we need to live with it and share our piece of the cake with them. Obviously,
Yeah, yeah. This can be very challenging. Do you have um, policies, or do you have strategy in place to address all these coming challenges? Because
we
to be
well,
resilient.
it's hard to say. It's hard to say. Um, we obviously we are also a private-driven company, privately owned company, um, and one or some of the tools that we are touching is we we are broadening, we're widening. In our case, we're widening not only the product scope of this of silos itself. Our company has a long tradition in steel manufacturing, like 40 years of steel manufacturing. They've been our factory has been producing um, towers for windmills. They've been in the train sector, in the energy sector. So we are now, let's say, increasing our marketing or our efforts in getting not only silos sold or supplied, but also steel structures related to the agricultural industry. We have several good partners. We have one good partner in Greece, for example, who not only takes the silo from us, he's also taking meanwhile all of the steel towers, sheds, and so on. We're designing for him. We're doing good prices as good as we can, and the quality is, as we come from this sector which is very demanding, like the energy sector and so on, the quality that we supply is, which we by the way apply also to the silo manufacturing, is very high. People are satisfied, so are taking more and more of these components. The factories were prepared for that, so increasing our product portfolio. uh, we are, let's say, looking very much into being very accurate in norms and calculations and service, like we discussed before during this podcast. So there we still, I think we have some differentiating factor, and obviously we'll have to think about our overseas competition over the next 1 to 3 years, how to react and how to, cannot say protect, but how to live with it in the sense that it doesn't affect us too much.
Yeah. Well, nowadays there is a big rock star out there, and nobody and everybody is talking about it. We haven't spoken so far about artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
how uh, we can envision applications in the grain industry. What do you
Hmm.
think?
Adrian, can you repeat? I did not understand the last.
I wanted to talk with you about artificial intelligence and how
Ah,
do you see it fit in our industry? Fit.
well, I I have asked ChatGPT a couple of times, what does a 30,000 ton silo plant cost? Still they don't give me a price. So still they don't give me a price. Um, um, Again, I think IE will come. In which sense, in which direction, in which applications, I cannot tell you, but for sure it will come. My feeling is it will come, at least in our company or in our as a manufacturer. I think it will affect us more as a company rather than on sales or the market. I'm not sure about what will affect to the, let's say, a grain trader or farmer. I'm for sure that it will something will happen. I've not yet heard anything very specific related to this, but it's affecting so many different businesses that sooner or well later will come to the grain business as well. But most likely the first steps will come, or might come to us in terms of how fast we can design something or how accurate we can design something new. Um, I can imagine, at least from what I've seen, is that today designing a specific steel structure uh, takes about 15 or 20 engineering hours to make a basic design.
Yeah,
Um, Already now, the tools that we have been, let's say, customized by our engineers that this work can be done within 8 hours. But they can imagine the day that you just throw a question into a system, it returns, this is the design for it, this is how it looks like, and these are the pieces and components, and these are maybe up to down to manufacturing drawings. Not sure, but that the ease of doing calculations, doing analysis, improving manufacturing, and so on, that there is linked to some AI or to some, let's say, big IT things,
yeah,
for sure, for sure. In our Sorry to revert always to automotive industry, but my wife works in automotive industry, and she tells me a lot of examples. So in automotive industry, they have this virtual glasses already
yeah,
for the installers of machines,
yes,
and the manuals are not paper anymore. They're just thrown into the screen, and they put together virtually the machines, training how to install these machines. So do some training before going to the customer, doing some maintenance, so they know the machine that they will find in another factory producing car components, and they go in and they have already worked with this machine because they work with this artificial intelligence to understand how this machine works, what will happen if I press this button, or what happens if I pull this bolt, and so on. So I can imagine something similar might happen in our business as well, that it helps our fitters, our supervisors, installers, maintenance, or especially the operations. It will be helping, I'm for sure it will be helping a lot, especially the operations.
yeah. It's. I remember some years ago there were some startups trying to innovate by using blockchain technology in the grain industry,
Hmm.
addressing the traceability of the products
Hmm.
in order to have a solid traceability record.
Yes,
And this is something that you know,
really work.
didn't work and it was not adopted, at least not at a wider scale. Is there a technology today that emerging technology, let's say, that you would not bet on, that in the in the medium or long term will stick to the industry,
Hmm.
not be adopted?
Hmm. But
Yes.
it doesn't mean that it cannot come at a later stage,
Oh yeah, yeah,
because you let's put another example which is more physical for me. We know a company that established themselves in our business, grain industry. They established themselves in India in the late 80s. And after a couple of years, they closed the activities in India and returned back to Europe, European manufacturer. Doesn't matter who it is, it's just only an example. And talking to the managers, like many years later, like today, they say it was too early. Now we are going to India back. Now it's a good moment to be there. Now the market has developed. Now the need is different from what it was 20 years ago. Now the customers, the investors, the farmers, and so on, uh, accept us for a meeting, want to understand, want to learn. We can supply, we can support them. 20 years ago, it probably was too early because the market was not yet there where it was supposed to be. Although already 20 years ago, India was supposed to be a huge market, which it is. But it's only 20 years later where they said we were too early, like 20 years ago. Now is the time to go. So some technologies in some sectors will enter faster than others. Again, AI will enter probably faster in the food processing itself than in the hardware that we are moving grain from A to B, from the caterpillar to from the Massey Ferguson to the dryer and out of it to a truck. Um, it will come later, but There's cooperatives in that we know that use tracking systems for the trucks with AI already, and they tell them you have to go to this farm, load this batch of mice, then go to that farm, load this batch of mice, and then via this way go to this mill to unload, and it's all driven automatically meanwhile. So the driver has just to drive to the sites that the system is giving him. And this was already existing like 5 or 10 years ago. And he probably in a farm he's not filling the whole silo, the whole truck, only maybe one or two of the bunkers
Yeah.
because of the quality of the grain is being harvested or the capacity of the mill where he's going to store it or the cooperative. So yeah, you see some examples are already running on AI.
Ah, let's change a bit the subject, and I would ask you to. Okay, so if you can travel back in time and change something in your
Travel back in time. Hmm. So it's a good question. I don't regret at all starting in this business. Not at all. I've been able to meet a lot of people like you. I've been traveling many countries of the world. I've been able and been lucky to meet a lot of different cultures, European, Middle East, Africa, different regions, Latin America, North America, Southeast Asia. So I'm lucky about this. I've been very lucky to be in a position to be able to travel and to meet all these people and face the different situations. Um, maybe I should have listened to my father when he asked me for the first time to join, not on the third time. This would have given me maybe 2 or 3 years more in this business. Here we have almost every day we face different situations. Obviously, we're always talking about silos and grain storage, obviously, but um, you never stop learning. So if there is something that would change, uh, maybe listen and start in this business a little bit earlier than what I started. But the rest I wouldn't change. I don't regret in this business. I don't regret anything.
you're very lucky to receive a great um, legacy from your
That's
father.
true.
What kind of legacy are you planning to create for the future generation?
To for future generations. Um, it's a good question. What kind of legacy I want to leave? Uh, maybe if we manage some of our uh, partners, some of our customers, some of the investors or farmers we work with uh, implement these technologies to safeguard the grain for a long time. As you know, there is figures out there that about 30% of the grain which is harvested is lost,
Yes.
which is a terrible amount of number, terrible high number. We're talking of thousands of millions of tons of grain, which is simply spoiled. If we were working on this sector, in this business, and others are able to reduce this number over the time, and we get retired, we can say, well, it's not only 30%, it's not 30% anymore, but only 25, which is still very high, and we've been able to educate a little bit in this sense, then I would feel happy.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, it's an interesting fact is that um, one of the traders that owns a grain silo did a survey at some time, like an assessment,
Yes.
and they realized that in only in one season, the pigeons uh, consume 80 tons of grains
Yeah,
only in a few months. 80 tons.
you
Just
can imagine.
birds
Only
coming.
for birds. And the pigeons, no matter why, they will find their way to eat something. But
Yes.
for them, it's easy to sit on top of a silo or close to the intake pit or somewhere and just to grab corns. And 80 tons is a mass. It's for our listeners, 80 tons. It's 4 trucks full of grain. 4 trucks full of grain.
And
It's a
only do
massive.
this, a few minutes while the truck is waiting to unload.
Yes,
They can go inside the truck and just pick up a few grains and fly away.
absolutely,
Oh, this is a huge loss. Not to mention
absolutely.
losses during the logistic chain, processing, and so on. So
Hmm.
it's
Correct.
a big issue.
It's one of the big issues in this industry. The loss of the quantity of grain which is lost from the harvest till it arrives to our desk. It's a massive number, and we can work a little bit on part of this number to get it reduced. Absolutely.
Is there a question that you would have liked to be asked, but I didn't ask it?
You asked me a lot of good questions.
Maybe you have a better one in mind.
No, no, you I think I appreciate all these questions that you have been placing me. I appreciate very much this invitation to participate on this. I'm always at your disposal. I had taken here a lot of notes about things to discuss, but again, we could be talking here for today and tomorrow and day after tomorrow. I don't think it's the sense of it. Probably we leave it for another moment on time to further have a conversation, a nice conversation on this on this grain storage topic.
Yeah,
And yes,
it's a real pleasure to talk with you. So I'm really looking forward for part two. I'm giving you another opportunity. Let's say if you can ask a very tricky question, a very complicated question that you don't have answer for at this point, we can.
we could together. We have discussed one of the points for which we have discussed these new technologies, AI, and so on. Why this some of these innovations don't start, no, in this specifically the grain storage and handling sector. So you have these harvesting machines, this Massey Ferguson. I don't know if I can, but these big harvesting machines which steer themselves alone over the field and do it all exactly up and down and left and right. Now you have all those drones flying over the fields, recognizing what is the status of the harvest and the corn, if they are infected or if they're ill, and so on. All these very fancy things which are out there in market um, for agriculture related, but not directly to the grain storage. And you challenged me with the question, uh, why we think, or why do I think that this is taking so long in our business to get into reality or transforming. Get this question to your next guest, please, and I would be very pleased to listen and to discuss, because this is one of the questions that, or one of the topics that I discuss with my colleagues and other partners. Uh, why is it so hard to get real disruptive technologies into grain handling and storing and storage when they're existing, when they could be of a lot of benefit to the customers, to the farmers, to the cooperatives, to the traders, and it still doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
But in the same sector, you have again the drones where you can do a lot of fantastic things, and you have these harvesting machines which they steer automatic, not only grain, like the tomato harvesting machines. They do harvest the tomatoes here in Spain. They have a driver who is having a cigarette while the tomato machine is harvesting, classifying, and almost replanting.
Yes.
Why in the grain handling and storage industry we have these difficulties into getting into new technologies? this would be a question that you place to me, and I ask you to place to your next guest.
I would be very happy to do that. It's in fact is one of my favorite questions.
Good.
Also, if our viewers would have an answer about on this topic, would be really great if they continue the conversation in the comment section. Yeah. Thank you very much, Antonio. It was
Thank you, Adrian. It's been a pleasure to see you again and to discuss, and always at your disposal.
thank you. Thank you for watching AgriTech Leaders podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and see you soon with more amazing guests like Antonio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian.